Title: My fiancé cheated with my best friend. They had no idea I was the secret heiress to a $1 billion empire. Chapter 1: The woman nobody really knew. People often say money changes people. They're wrong. Money doesn't change people, it reveals them. My name is Amelia Hart. 3 years ago, I was preparing to marry the man I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. 6 months later, I destroyed his career, bankrupted his ambitions, exposed a conspiracy inside my family's company, and watched everyone who betrayed me lose everything they thought they had won. But to understand how it happened, you need to know who I really was, and more importantly, who I pretended to be. Most people knew me as Amelia, a quiet marketing coordinator earning an average salary, a woman who rented a modest apartment, a woman who drove a 5-year-old sedan, a woman who clipped coupons, a woman who worried about monthly expenses. At least, that's what everyone believed. The truth was very different. I was the sole heir to Hart Global Holdings, a multinational conglomerate with interests in technology, healthcare, logistics, energy, and finance. At the time, the company was worth over $12 billion, and one day it would belong to me. But nobody outside my family knew that. Not my coworkers, not my friends, not even the man who proposed to me, especially not him. My father had always warned me about wealth. People don't lie because you're poor, he used to say. They lie because they think you're useful. When I graduated from university, I made a decision. I would build relationships without revealing my family name. No trust funds, no luxury penthouses, no executive titles, just me. A normal woman living a normal life. At first, it felt liberating. Then I met Daniel. The moment I saw him, I understood why people wrote songs about love. He was confident without being arrogant, ambitious without seeming greedy, successful without appearing obsessed with money. At least, that was the image he projected. Looking back now, I realize he was performing, and I was the audience. We met during a corporate networking event. I was attending as a junior employee. Daniel was there representing a financial consulting firm. The conversation started over coffee. It lasted 4 hours. Before the evening ended, he asked for my number. 3 days later, we had our first date. 6 months later, we moved in together. 2 years later, he proposed. I said yes, without hesitation, without doubt, without realizing I was making the biggest mistake of my life. There was only one person happier than Daniel when I accepted the proposal: my best friend, Sophia. Sophia and I had known each other since university. She was intelligent, charismatic, and fiercely loyal, or so I believed. She celebrated every milestone with me, every birthday, every promotion, every holiday, every heartbreak. She was more than a friend, she was family. When Daniel proposed, Sophia cried harder than I did. She helped choose the venue, she helped choose the flowers, she helped choose the wedding dress. Sometimes she seemed more invested in the wedding than I was. I thought it was sweet. Now I know better. The first warning sign appeared 6 months before the wedding. It seemed insignificant at the time. Daniel started protecting his phone. Before, he would leave it on the kitchen table. Suddenly, it never left his pocket. He changed passwords, turned the screen away when texting, stepped outside to take calls. Whenever I asked about it, he had an explanation. Work, clients, confidential projects. I believed him. Love makes excuses for things logic would question. Then came the second warning sign. Sophia started acting strangely. Whenever Daniel entered a room, her behavior changed. Subtle things, a glance, a smile, a sudden silence. The kind of details you only notice in hindsight. One evening we were having dinner together. Daniel made a joke. Sophia laughed. Their eyes met. And for a fraction of a second, something felt wrong. Not obvious, Not enough to accuse anyone, just enough to make me uncomfortable. I ignored the feeling. That would prove expensive. Weeks passed, wedding planning intensified, life moved forward. And then, everything changed. It happened on a Thursday evening. I remember because I had left work early. Daniel was supposedly attending an investor meeting. Sophia claimed she was visiting family. I decided to spend the evening alone. Halfway through preparing dinner, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. No name, no message, just a single photograph. I opened it. My heart stopped. The image showed Daniel entering a luxury hotel. He wasn't alone. Standing beside him was Sophia. I stared at the screen, frozen, confused, unable to process what I was seeing. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe another image arrived, then another, then another. Each one destroyed another piece of my denial. By the time the final photograph appeared, I could barely breathe. The evidence was undeniable. My fiancé, my best friend, together, not once, not accidentally, repeatedly, deliberately, intimately. The room felt smaller, my chest felt tighter. For nearly an hour I sat alone in silence. No tears, no screaming, no panic, just shock. Then the final message arrived. It wasn't a photograph, it was a sentence that would change everything. Before you confront them, ask yourself why Daniel recently applied for an executive position at Hart Global Holdings. I read the message 3 times, then a fourth, then a fifth. My blood ran cold. There was only one problem. Daniel wasn't supposed to know anything about Hart Global. Nobody knew it belonged to my family. Nobody. So how had he applied for a senior position there? And why was a stranger connecting that application to his affair? At that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just betrayal. This was something bigger, much bigger. And for the first time in my life, I decided to stop pretending to be powerless. The next morning, I made a phone call. Not to Daniel, not to Sophia, not to the police. I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years, the head of security for Hart Global Holdings. When he answered, I said 6 words. I need everything you have on Daniel Carter. There was silence, then a response. Understood, Miss Hart. And that was the moment the game truly began. Because Daniel thought he was deceiving an ordinary woman. Sophia thought she was stealing an ordinary fiancé. Neither of them realized they had just declared war on the future owner of a billion-dollar empire. And before this was over, they were going to wish they never met me. Chapter 2. The first lie I chose to believe. I did not sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed until sunrise, staring at the engagement ring on my finger. Daniel had chosen it himself, or at least, that was what he told me. A simple oval diamond on a thin gold band, not too flashy, not too expensive, perfect for the version of me he thought he was marrying. At the time, I thought it was thoughtful. Now I wondered whether he had chosen something modest because he loved simplicity, or because he believed I was not worth more. By 7 a.m., my apartment felt colder than usual. Daniel still had not come home. He had texted me at midnight. Meeting ran late. Staying near the office. Love you. Love you. 2 words that suddenly felt like an insult. I read the message again. Then I looked at the photographs. Daniel walking into the hotel with Sophia. Sophia wearing the coat I bought her for Christmas. Daniel's hand resting gently on the small of her back. Not like a friend, not like a mistake, like a man who believed he had chosen. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the ring across the room. I wanted to call Sophia and demand answers. But I did none of those things. Because one sentence kept echoing in my head. Ask yourself why Daniel recently applied for an executive position at Hart Global Holdings. That was not random. That was specific. And specificity meant danger. Daniel had mentioned Hart Global before. Not often, but enough. He would talk about the company with admiration, almost obsession. He called it the last true empire in private hands. He said whoever got close to the Hart family would never worry about money again. I remembered laughing at that. I remembered saying, "Sounds like you've thought about it a lot." He smiled and replied, "Everyone in finance has." At the time, it seemed harmless, ambition, professional interest. Now I wondered if every conversation had been a clue. At 8:15 a.m., my phone rang. It was Marcus Vale, head of global security at Hart Global Holdings, former military intelligence. My grandfather had hired him 20 years earlier after a corporate kidnapping attempt in Switzerland. Marcus was not the kind of man who panicked. So when he spoke in a low voice, I knew the situation was worse than I thought. "Miss Hart, we pulled the preliminary file on Daniel Carter." "And?" "He applied to the Strategic Investments Division 3 weeks ago." My throat tightened. "What position?" "Vice President of Acquisitions." I almost laughed. Daniel had told me he was applying for a mid-level finance role somewhere else. Nothing major, nothing permanent, just a step forward. Vice President of Acquisitions at Hart Global was not a step forward. It was a leap into the inner machinery of my family's empire. "Was he shortlisted?" I asked. "Yes." My stomach dropped. Marcus continued. "He was recommended internally." "By whom?" A pause. Then he said the name. "Eleanor Voss." I closed my eyes. Eleanor Voss was not just any executive. She was the chief legal officer of Hart Global. Brilliant, respected, feared. And for the last 2 years, quietly campaigning against my eventual appointment as chairwoman. My father had warned me about her. "She smiles like a diplomat," he once said, "but she thinks like a knife." I had never liked Eleanor, but I had also never imagined she would connect herself to Daniel. "Why would Eleanor recommend him?" I asked. "We are investigating that now." "Does she know who I am?" "She knows you exist. She does not know your current identity." That was important. Only a small circle knew I was living under a simplified version of my name. To the company, I was Amelia Hartwell on paper. To the world, Amelia Hart. A tiny difference, enough to hide in plain sight. Enough for Daniel not to connect the woman in his apartment to the family whose company he desperately wanted to enter. Unless someone told him. "Marcus," I said slowly, "I want a full background investigation." "Already underway. Daniel, Sophia, Eleanor, anyone connected to this application." "Yes, Miss Hart." "And Marcus?" "Yes." "Do not tell my father." There was a pause. "Your father will ask." "Then tell him I requested discretion." "He will not like that." "He doesn't have to." Another silence. Then Marcus said, "Understood." I ended the call and looked around my apartment. Suddenly, everything felt staged. The cheap curtains, the secondhand coffee table, the tiny kitchen Daniel complained about. He used to joke that when he made partner, he would rescue me from my little life. I used to think it was romantic. Now I heard the arrogance underneath. He never saw me as an equal. He saw me as someone to upgrade, someone to manage, someone to leave behind once he found something better, or someone richer. And Sophia? Sophia knew how much I loved him. She knew how much I trusted her. She had sat beside me while I tried on wedding dresses. She had smiled as I imagined walking down the aisle. She had helped me write vows for a man she was sleeping with. That kind of betrayal does not happen by accident. It requires planning, comfort, confidence, and maybe, just maybe, a promise. Daniel came home at 10:30 a.m. He looked tired, but not guilty. That was the first thing I noticed. A guilty man hesitates. Daniel walked in like a man returning from work. He kissed my forehead. "Morning, babe." I felt his lips touch my skin and nearly stepped back, but I held still. If he noticed my silence, he did not show it. "Rough night," he said, loosening his tie. The meeting went forever. With investors? Yeah. Which investors? He froze for half a second, just half. Then he smiled. Mostly regional partners, boring stuff. Lie. The first lie I noticed after knowing the truth, but not the first lie he had told. I nodded. Sounds exhausting. He walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. Did you eat? No. You should eat more. You get dramatic when you're tired. Dramatic. A word he used whenever I felt something inconvenient. I watched him pour orange juice into a glass. His shirt was wrinkled. There was a faint scent of Sophia's perfume on him, a scent I knew because I bought it for her birthday. Something inside me hardened, not broke, hardened. Daniel, I said. He looked up. Are you happy? The question surprised him. What? With us, with the wedding, with everything? He laughed softly. Where is this coming from? Just answer. He walked over and took my hand, the same hand wearing his ring. Of course I'm happy. I love you. His eyes were steady, his voice was warm, his hand was familiar, and every part of it was false. That was the moment I understood something important. Daniel was not trapped in a lie. He lived there, comfortably. I smiled. I love you too. The words tasted like ash, but I said them anyway. Because if Daniel wanted to play a role, then so could I. For the next 2 weeks, I became the perfect fiancé. I asked about wedding flowers. I laughed at his jokes. I kissed him goodbye. I hugged Sophia when she came over to discuss bridesmaid dresses. I watched them stand in my kitchen pretending not to know each other's secrets. Sometimes Daniel would look at Sophia for half a second too long. Sometimes Sophia would touch his arm and then quickly pull away. They thought they were careful. They were not. People who think they are smarter than you always become careless. Meanwhile, Marcus sent updates every night. Daniel's application file, his financial records, his consulting contracts, his private emails obtained through lawful internal corporate review once his Hart Global application became part of company compliance screening. And the deeper Marcus looked, the uglier the picture became. Daniel was in debt. Not ordinary debt, dangerous debt. Failed investments, hidden loans, a gambling account under a shell name, a private lender charging interest rates that belonged in a crime novel. He had been living far above his means for years. Designer watches, luxury hotels, private clubs, expensive dinners. None of it paid for by success. All of it paid for by borrowed money. And Sophia knew. That was a second knife. Messages between them showed that Daniel had promised her a future. Not love, not marriage, a future. He told her that once he entered Hart Global, his income would triple. He told her that Amelia was safe, but temporary. He told her I was sweet, predictable, and easy to manage. Easy to manage. I read that message in my office at Hart Global's private executive floor, a place Daniel had never seen, a place Sophia would never be allowed to enter. For 10 minutes, I could not move. Then I printed the message and placed it in a folder. The folder already had a name, Carter. Every betrayal, every lie, every document, every photograph, every message, it all went inside. One afternoon, I received another update from Marcus. This one was different. He called instead of emailing. Miss Hart, we found something involving Sophia. I stood by the window overlooking the city. What? She received a payment 2 months ago. From Daniel? No. Then from who? An entity registered under Voss Strategic Advisory. Eleanor Voss again. My fingers tightened around the phone. How much? 50,000. For what? That is unclear, but the timing is concerning. When? 3 days before Daniel submitted his application, I stared at my reflection in the glass. Suddenly, the affair looked different. Still personal, still cruel, but now it had corporate fingerprints. Sophia was not just sleeping with my fiancé. She might have been helping someone position him inside my company. Find out what Sophia gave Eleanor, I said. We are already working on it. That evening, Sophia came over with a bottle of wine. She hugged me at the door. Bride-to-be! Her voice was bright, her smile perfect. I let her in. We sat on the sofa, the same sofa where she had cried with me after my mother's funeral. For a moment, grief moved through me. Not for Daniel, for the friendship I thought existed. Sophia poured wine. You seem tired, she said. Wedding stress. She laughed. Just wait until the final week. You'll want to run away. Would you stop me? Of course. She said it too quickly. I looked at her. Would you? Her smile weakened. What do you mean? I mean, if I was about to make a terrible mistake, would you tell me? She blinked, then reached for my hand. Amelia, you know I'd always protect you. That was when I almost lost control. Almost. Instead, I squeezed her hand. I know. Her phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up. Daniel. She flipped it over immediately. Too late. We both saw it. The room went quiet. Sophia's face drained of color. I tilted my head. Daniel texting you? She laughed, badly. Oh, probably wedding stuff. At 9:47 p.m.? He's probably asking about your surprise. My surprise? She nodded too fast. Yes, I wasn't supposed to say anything. I smiled slowly. How sweet. She relaxed. Only a little, but I saw fear in her eyes. Good. Fear meant she knew the walls were moving. After she left, I checked the latest file from Marcus. Sophia had sent Daniel a message after leaving my apartment. She's acting weird. Do you think she knows? Daniel replied 3 minutes later. No, she's too trusting. Just keep her calm until the wedding. Until the wedding. That phrase bothered me. Why until the wedding? Daniel did not know I was wealthy. He thought I had nothing. So what changed after marriage? The answer came 2 days later, from my family lawyer. Daniel had requested to review standard marital financial protections through a private legal contact. He was asking questions about spousal claims, asset division, marital property, debt transfer. My blood went cold. Daniel did not think I was rich, but he knew something, or thought he did. Maybe he believed I had access to company opportunities. Maybe Eleanor had promised him a position after the wedding. Maybe he planned to marry me, use me as his respectable image, move into Hart Global, and then discard me when useful. It was cruel, but not clever enough, because Daniel had made one fatal mistake. He underestimated the woman he betrayed. 3 weeks before the wedding, I received the final confirmation. Sophia had not merely taken money. She had provided Eleanor with personal information about me, my routines, my contacts, my relationship with Daniel, my emotional vulnerabilities. She had described me as highly loyal, conflict avoidant, and unlikely to challenge Daniel publicly. I read that sentence twice, then laughed, out loud. Not because it was funny, because it was the last time anyone would ever describe me that way. That night, I made 3 decisions. First, the wedding would continue. Second, Daniel would be allowed to complete his final interview at Hart Global. Third, Sophia would stand beside me as maid of honor. Not because I forgave them, but because betrayal deserves an audience, and I was going to give them the biggest one possible. Chapter 3. The Man Who Wanted My Empire. There is a strange kind of power in knowing someone is lying to you. Before you know the truth, every lie is a weapon. After you know the truth, every lie becomes evidence. Daniel had no idea that I knew about Sophia. Sophia had no idea that I knew about the $50,000 payment. And Eleanor Voss had no idea that the quiet woman she had described as conflict avoidant was already watching all three of them. That gave me something more valuable than money: time. 3 weeks before the wedding, Daniel received the phone call he had been waiting for. I was standing in our kitchen when it happened. His phone rang at exactly 6:42 p.m. He looked at the screen and smiled. Not the warm smile he used with me. This was different. This was hunger. He stepped onto the balcony to answer. I continued chopping vegetables as though I had noticed nothing. Through the glass, I watched him straighten his shoulders, nod, smile again, then pace. 5 minutes later, he returned. He tried to look calm. He failed. "Good news?" I asked. He leaned against the kitchen counter. "Maybe." "Maybe sounds promising." He smiled. "I got through to the final stage for a new position." I put down the knife. "Really?" "Yeah." "Where?" There it was, the question. For half a second, Daniel hesitated. Then he lied. "Vanguard Meridian." I almost admired how easily he said it. Vanguard Meridian was a real investment firm, small enough to sound believable, prestigious enough to explain his excitement. But Daniel had not applied there. He had applied to my company, Hart Global Holdings. "That's amazing," I said. His face relaxed. "I didn't want to tell you until it was serious." "Of course." "The salary could change everything for us." "For us." I smiled. "What would you do with all that money?" Daniel laughed. "First, get us out of this apartment." I looked around. The apartment I had chosen deliberately. The apartment he believed represented the limits of my life. And then? A proper house, better neighborhood, maybe travel. Children? His expression changed, only slightly. Eventually. Eventually. Another word that sounds like a promise when someone wants to avoid giving you one. I nodded. That sounds nice. Daniel walked toward me and wrapped his arms around my waist. You deserve more than this, Amelia. I looked into his eyes. He meant the apartment. I heard something else. You deserve more than me. For once, he was telling the truth. The next morning, I entered Hart Global through the underground executive entrance. The security guard nodded. "Good morning, Miss Hart." "Morning." My heels echoed across the marble corridor. I rarely visited headquarters. That had been part of the arrangement with my father. If I wanted anonymity, I had to maintain distance. No photographs, no public events, no board appearances, no executive biography. To most employees, Amelia Hartwell was a name in succession documents, a future possibility, a rumor. But that morning, I was done hiding from the people trying to steal from me. Marcus met me outside the private elevator. He carried a black folder. "You asked for everything on the Voss connection." "And?" His expression told me before he spoke. "It is worse than we thought." We entered a secure conference room. No windows, no personal devices, no recording systems connected to the main company network. Marcus placed the folder in front of me. Inside were corporate filings, payment records, consulting agreements, travel logs, and photographs. The first photograph showed Eleanor Voss leaving a private restaurant. Beside her was Daniel. The date was 6 months earlier, before his application, before the anonymous photographs, before I suspected anything. I looked at Marcus. They knew each other. Yes. How long? At least 11 months. My stomach tightened. 11 months. Daniel had been discussing Hart Global with Eleanor before he ever told me he was considering a new job. Why? We believe Eleanor has been building an internal coalition. For what? Marcus opened another document, a board succession forecast. My name appeared at the top. Amelia Hartwell, projected controlling chair. Below it were voting blocks, supporters, opponents, undecided directors. Eleanor's name appeared beside a red category, opposition. She doesn't want me to inherit control, I said. No. Why? Because your father intends to restructure executive authority when you become chair. I knew about the restructuring, but only partially. My father believed Hart Global had become too dependent on a small circle of executives. He planned to divide power, strengthen independent oversight, limit discretionary legal authority, which meant one thing: Eleanor would lose influence. Marcus pointed to another page. We believe she wants Daniel inside strategic investments before the transition. Why Daniel? He is ambitious, financially vulnerable, easily influenced. I almost laughed. You mean corruptible? Marcus did not smile. Yes. The word hung between us. Corruptible. I thought about Daniel sleeping beside me, his hand on my waist, his promises, his lies. Had Eleanor chosen him because of me, or had he chosen me because of Eleanor? I asked the question. Marcus hesitated. We don't know yet. That answer frightened me more than anything else, because there were two possibilities. The first was that Daniel met me by chance, betrayed me, and later became useful to Eleanor. The second was that nothing about our relationship had been accidental. Find out when Eleanor first learned Daniel was dating me. We're trying. No, find out. Marcus nodded. I closed the folder. When is Daniel's final interview? Friday. Who's on the panel? 3 executives. Eleanor is not officially included. Unofficially? She selected 2 of them. Of course she did. I stood. I want to attend. Marcus stared at me. That would reveal your identity. Not if they don't know who I am. You cannot walk into a vice presidential interview unnoticed. I don't need to. He waited. I smiled. I'll watch from the executive observation room. For the first time that morning, Marcus almost looked impressed. Friday arrived. Daniel woke before his alarm. He showered, shaved twice, changed shirts 3 times. I sat on the bed pretending to read emails. Big day? I asked. He adjusted his tie. Final interview. At Vanguard Meridian? Another pause. Yes. Lie number 47. Not that I was counting. Actually, I was. I had started a list. He kissed my cheek. Wish me luck. I smiled. More than you know. 2 hours later, I sat behind mirrored glass at Hart Global headquarters. Daniel entered the interview room, confident, prepared, beautifully dressed. He wore the navy suit I bought him for our engagement photographs. The irony was almost artistic. 3 executives sat opposite him. I recognized all of them. 2 loyal to Eleanor, 1 undecided. The interview began. At first, Daniel was impressive. I had forgotten how convincing he could be. He spoke about acquisitions, market expansion, risk management, corporate integration. He quoted numbers without notes, answered complex questions calmly. For a moment, I saw the man I thought I loved. Then one interviewer asked, Mr. Carter, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Daniel smiled. At the highest level of leadership I can earn. Would that include board service? If the opportunity arose. And what attracts you to Hart Global specifically? Daniel leaned forward. Legacy. I felt something cold move through me. He continued. Hart Global is unique because it remains influenced by family ownership while operating internationally. That creates both strength and vulnerability. Vulnerability. The interviewer raised an eyebrow. Explain. Daniel smiled. Family-controlled companies can become emotionally attached to tradition. Sometimes the next generation inherits authority without having earned operational credibility. The room went silent. Behind the glass, I stopped breathing. He was talking about me. He did not know it, but he was talking about me. One interviewer asked, "And how should a company manage that risk?" Daniel answered without hesitation, "By ensuring experienced executives retain sufficient authority during succession." There it was, Eleanor's philosophy, almost word for word. Marcus, standing beside me, whispered, "He's been coached." I nodded. My hands were perfectly still. Inside, something was burning. Daniel continued, "A strong board should protect the company from inexperienced inherited leadership." I looked at the man I planned to marry, the man who called me ordinary, the man who believed I was too trusting to discover an affair, the man interviewing for a position inside my empire while arguing that I should never control it. And suddenly, revenge stopped feeling emotional. It became governance. Daniel was not merely unfaithful, he was dangerous. The interview ended 40 minutes later. The panel thanked him. He left. I remained behind the glass. One executive immediately said, "Eleanor was right. He's exactly what we need." Another nodded. "Ambitious, intelligent, no loyalty to the Hart succession plan." The third executive looked uncomfortable. "This position is not supposed to be political." The first laughed. "Humming at this level is political." Marcus looked at me. I sang nothing, but I remembered every word. That evening, Daniel came home carrying champagne. "We're celebrating," he announced. I quoting up from the sofa. "You got the job?" "Not officially." "Then what are we celebrating?" He sworn. "I know when I've won." Confidence, arrogance, delusion. Sponsors, they wear the sum faces. He opposed the bottle. Champagne spilled across the counter. I laughed because he exposed me. He poured 2 glasses. "To our future," he said. I choosing mine. "To getting exactly what we deserve." He disliked. "I'll drink to that." We touching glasses. Daniel had no idea I had watched his interview. No idea I knew about Eleanor. No idea I had heard him describe my inheritance as a corporate vulnerability. He drank. I did not. Later that night, while Daniel slept, I received a secure message from Marcus. "We found the first connection." I left the bedroom and locked myself in the bathroom. Then I called him. "What connection?" Marcus spoke quietly. "Eleanor accessed a confidential background file 3 years ago." "Whose file?" "Yours." My heart stopped. "When?" "6 weeks before you met Daniel Carter." The bathroom seemed to tilt. I gripped the sink. "No." "Miss Hart, no! Check again." "We did." I closed my eyes. 6 weeks. Eleanor accessed my confidential file 6 weeks before Daniel met me at that networking event. The meeting I thought was chance, the coffee, the conversation, the beginning of everything. "Was Daniel at that event by invitation?" I asked. Marcus paused, then gave me the answer that destroyed the last innocent memory I had left. "No." I could barely speak. "What?" "His name was added to the guest list 48 hours before the event." "By whom?" "We traced the authorization." I already knew, but I needed to hear it. "Eleanor Voss." Silence. I looked toward the bedroom. Daniel was asleep 20 feet away. The man I had loved for 3 years. The man I planned to marry. The man I thought I met by accident. There had been no accident. My relationship had been engineered. I was not simply a woman whose fiancé cheated. I was a target. And suddenly every memory became evidence. Our first meeting, our first date, his curiosity about my childhood, his questions about my father, his fascination with Hart Global, his proposal, the wedding, all of it. I whispered, "How long has he known?" "We don't know." "Find out. We will." I ended the call. Then I stood alone in the darkness. I expected to cry. I didn't. Something had changed. The woman who wanted explanations was gone. The woman who wanted apologies was gone. Even the woman who wanted revenge was changing. Because revenge was too small now. This was about control. My family, my company, my future. I returned to the bedroom. Daniel was sleeping peacefully. I stood beside him for a long time. Then his phone lit up. A message from Sophia. I should not have been able to see it, but the preview appeared on the screen. "Eleanor says everything changes after the wedding. Are you sure Amelia will sign?" My blood turned cold. Sign what? I stared at the message. Then another appeared. Daniel had not responded yet. Sophia sent, "Because if she refuses, the whole plan collapses." I stepped back from the bed. There it was, the next layer. The wedding was not the end of their plan, it was the beginning. And somewhere, hidden behind the affair, the job application, and Eleanor's conspiracy, there was a document they needed me to sign. I did not know what it was, not yet, but I knew one thing. I was going to sign something, just not what they expected. Chapter 4. The Contract Hidden Inside My Marriage. There are documents that change your life when you sign them. Marriage certificates, mortgages, wills, contracts. Most people believe the danger is hidden in the small print. They are wrong. The real danger is often hidden inside trust. Eleanor says everything changes after the wedding. Are you sure Amelia will sign? I stood beside the bed, staring at Sophia's message on Daniel's phone. Then the second message. Because if she refuses, the whole plan collapses. Daniel moved beneath the sheets. I froze. His hand shifted toward the phone. For one terrifying second, I thought he was awake. Then he turned onto his side and continued sleeping. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. 20. His breathing remained steady. I stepped away. My heart was beating so loudly I could hear it. I did not touch the phone. That mattered. By then, Marcus had already warned me about evidence. "Do not become careless because you are angry," he had said. "If this becomes litigation, how information is obtained may matter as much as what it proves." So I did nothing. No screenshots, no forwarding messages, no guessing his password. I simply memorized the words, every one of them. Then I went into the bathroom and locked the door. At 2:17 in the morning, I called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. "Miss Hart?" "They need my signature." Silence. "Who?" "Daniel, Sophia, Eleanor. I don't know exactly who, but Sophia sent Daniel a message. She said Eleanor says everything changes after the wedding. She asked whether I would sign." "Sign what?" "I don't know." Marcus became very quiet. That was when I knew he was thinking the same thing I was. The wedding was not merely emotional cover. It created a legal event, a change in status, marriage, spousal rights, shared liabilities, beneficiary designations, property arrangements, financial disclosures, powers of attorney. 1,000 legal doors that did not exist before. "Marcus," I whispered, "I need my family lawyer." "I'll call Nathan." No. Nathan Cole had represented my father for 26 years. He was loyal, brilliant, and far too visible. If Eleanor was monitoring the Hart family's legal activity, contacting Nathan would alert her. I need someone outside the company. I know someone. Who? Rebecca Shaw. I knew the name. Everyone in corporate law knew the name. Rebecca Shaw had spent 15 years dismantling fraud cases that other lawyers considered impossible. She specialized in corporate misconduct, asset concealment, shareholder disputes, and complex matrimonial structures involving private wealth. More importantly, she hated Eleanor Voss. Can we trust her? I asked. Marcus answered immediately. Yes. Arrange it. When? I looked toward the bathroom door. Daniel was sleeping on the other side. Now. 3 hours later, before sunrise, I entered a private dining room above a 24-hour hotel restaurant. Rebecca Shaw was already waiting. She was in her early 50s, silver at the edges of her dark hair. No unnecessary jewelry, no wasted movement. She looks like the kind of woman who could destroy you politely. Marcus stood near the door. Rebecca did not offer small talk. You are getting married in 18 days. Yes. You suspect your fiancé is involved in a conspiracy concerning Hart Global. Yes. He is having an affair with your best friend. Yes. And your best friend appears to have received money from an entity connected to your company's chief legal officer. Yes. Rebecca opened a notebook. And now you believe they need you to sign something after marriage. Yes. She looked at me for several seconds. Then she asked, Why are you still getting married? The question hit harder than I expected. Because I need to know what they want. Rebecca's expression did not change. That is not a legal strategy. No. It is dangerous. Yes. You could expose yourself to financial claims, reputational harm, and unnecessary litigation. I know. No, she said calmly. You understand the words. I'm not convinced you understand the risk. I leaned forward. Then explain it. Rebecca closed the notebook. If Daniel knows or suspects that you have a connection to Hart Global, marriage could give him opportunities he does not currently have. Not ownership of your inheritance automatically, not magical access to company assets. Real law does not work that way. But marriage creates leverage. What kind? Financial disclosure, claims involving jointly acquired property, access to personal information, potential arguments about beneficial interests, pressure during divorce proceedings, spousal influence, reputation, and depending on what you sign, contractual rights. I thought about Sophia's message. Everything changes after the wedding. Rebecca nodded. Exactly. I felt cold. So what do we do? We find the document before you sign it. The investigation changed that morning. Until then, Marcus had been investigating people. Now we investigated paper. Every wedding-related contract, every financial advisor, every insurance inquiry, every legal consultation Daniel had made, every company connected to him, every document that might appear after marriage. The first discovery came within 48 hours. Daniel had formed a company, Carter Strategic Ventures Limited, created 4 months earlier. He had never mentioned it. The company had no employees, no office, no visible business activity, but it had received 2 payments. One from a consulting entity connected to Eleanor, the other from a company registered in Luxembourg. The second company was harder to trace. Marcus called me from a secure line. We're still working through the ownership chain. What does Carter Strategic Ventures do? Officially, strategic consulting. Unofficially, nothing we can prove. Then why pay it? That is the question. The next morning, Daniel brought me coffee in bed. I almost laughed. He sat beside me. I've been thinking about us. Dangerous words from a dishonest man. What about us? Finances. There it was. I kept my face neutral. What about them? We're getting married. We should be organized. I thought you handled most of that. I do, but marriage changes things. The exact phrase. Marriage changes things. I smiled. That sounds serious. It's not, just practical. He reached into his work bag and removed a folder. My entire body became alert. He placed it on the bed. I spoke to a financial planner. Without me? Just preliminary. I opened the folder. Insurance documents, joint budgeting forms, beneficiary information. Nothing obviously dangerous. Daniel watched my face, too carefully. What do you think? He asked. I think you're becoming very organized. He laughed. Someone has to be. I turned another page, then another, and there it was. A document titled Post-Marriage Asset Consolidation and Investment Authorization. I read the title twice. What's this? Daniel shrugged. Standard investment stuff. Standard? Basically lets us manage certain assets jointly. Rebecca's voice echoed in my head. Do not sign anything. I continued reading. The language was dense, deliberately dense. References to pooled investment vehicles, discretionary management authority, future beneficial interests, assigned proceeds, successor assets. I looked up. Daniel, I don't have assets. He smiled. Not now. Not now. 2 words, a confession disguised as optimism. What does that mean? He laughed. Nothing. I mean, we'll build together. I closed the folder. I'll read it later. For the first time, irritation crossed his face. It's pretty standard. Then there's no rush. His smile returned, but it was thinner now. Of course. That afternoon, I gave Rebecca the document, not the original. I had asked Daniel if I could take it to look over during lunch. He agreed, because he still thought I was stupid. Rebecca read it once, then again. By the 3rd page, her expression changed. What? She did not answer. What is it? She placed the document on the table. This is not standard. My stomach tightened. What does it do? It is written to appear mutual, but several clauses create extremely broad authority. For Daniel? For the appointed investment manager. Who is that? Rebecca pointed to a definition buried near the back. Carter Strategic Ventures Limited, Daniel's shell company. I felt my pulse in my throat. What authority? Potential authority over assets voluntarily designated into the structure. I wouldn't designate anything. Maybe not knowingly. She turned several pages. This clause includes future proceeds arising from declared beneficial interests. I stared at her. English, Rebecca. If you later disclose certain inheritance-related income, trust distributions, or beneficial interests and those assets are represented as part of the marital investment plan, Daniel's company could claim management authority. Could he take Hart Global? No. Her answer was immediate. Do not exaggerate the threat. He cannot steal a multinational company through a badly disguised marital contract. That should have reassured me. It did not. But he could create litigation, freeze disputed assets, claim contractual expectations, obtain sensitive financial information, generate leverage during a marital breakdown. And if someone inside Hart Global coordinated the structure, Eleanor, then the objective may not be direct ownership. I understood. Access. Rebecca nodded. Access. Hart Global was private. Our ownership structure was complex. Trusts, holding companies, voting arrangements, succession mechanisms. If Daniel gained access to confidential disclosures through marriage and litigation, Eleanor could learn things she had never been authorized to see. The contract was not a weapon designed to steal my empire. It was a key designed to open the door. I felt sick. Can we prove Eleanor drafted this? Not yet. Can we prove Daniel understands it? Not yet. Can we prove Sophia is involved? Not yet. 3 answers, all the same. Not yet. I stood and walked toward the window. Below us, the city moved normally. People crossed streets, buses stopped, coffee shops opened. Nobody knew that my wedding had become part of a corporate operation. What happens if I refuse to sign? Rebecca looked at me. They adapt. And if I pretend I will? They reveal more. I turned. Marcus was watching me. He already knew what I was thinking. No, he said. Rebecca looked between us. What? Marcus shook his head. She wants to bait them. I smiled. Rebecca did not. Absolutely not. I don't need to sign their document. Amelia, I need them to believe I will. Rebecca stood. This is not a game. I know. Then stop behaving like it is. The words hit the room like a slap. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then I said, they engineered my relationship. We suspect that. They paid my best friend. We have evidence of a payment, not its purpose. They placed Daniel near me. We suspect that too. They are trying to use my marriage to access my family. Rebecca's voice softened. Yes. I looked at her. Then tell me the legal way to make them expose themselves. That changed everything. For the next 4 hours, we built a trap. Not an illegal trap, not entrapment, not forged evidence. Something simpler. We would give them what they wanted most: confidence. I returned home that evening carrying the folder. Daniel was cooking. He looking at it immediately. You read it? Most of it. And? I placed it on the counter. It seems complicated. His shoulders tightened. But I trust you. There, the sentence the head going for. His face softened. You do? Of course. I touched his arm. We're getting married. He smiled. Yes, we are. I just want one change. His smile weakened. What change? I want to sign after the wedding.
He stared at me. Why? I laughed lightly. Because signing a post-marriage agreement before marriage feels weird. For 2 seconds, Daniel said nothing. Then he smiled. That makes sense. But his eyes had changed. He was excited, too excited. That night, he left the apartment at 11:20 p.m. He told me he needed to buy medicine. Marcus's surveillance team followed him. Daniel did not go to a pharmacy. He drove to an underground car park beneath a private members club. Sophia arrived 9 minutes later. Eleanor arrived 12 minutes after that. All 3 entered the same private lift. For the first time, they were physically together. My fiancé, my best friend, the woman trying to undermine my succession. Marcus sent me one photograph, 3 people entering one elevator. I stared at it for a long time. Then my phone rang, unknown number. The same unknown number that had sent the hotel photographs. I answered. Nobody spoke. Who is this? Silence. Then a distorted voice. You're looking in the wrong direction. My blood ran cold. What does that mean? Daniel is not the architect. Who are you? Ask your father what happened in Geneva 18 years ago. The line went dead. I stood alone in the apartment. Geneva, 18 years ago. I had been 11. My father had traveled constantly then. Business meetings, acquisitions, private negotiations.
I remembered almost nothing, except one thing. The summer he returned from Switzerland with a scar across his left hand. He told me it came from broken glass. I never questioned it, until now. I called Marcus. He answered immediately. What happened in Geneva 18 years ago? Silence. Not confusion, recognition. Marcus? Who told you about Geneva? My heart began pounding. So something happened. Miss Hart, what happened? I cannot discuss this over the phone. Then come here. I can't. Why? His answer changed the entire investigation. Because if someone mentioned Geneva, your communications may already be compromised. I looked around the apartment, the walls, the lights, Daniel's laptop, the smart speaker in the kitchen. Every ordinary object suddenly looked dangerous. Marcus continued. Leave the apartment. Now? Immediately. What about Daniel? Do not contact him. Marcus, take nothing except your phone, walk downstairs, a vehicle will meet you in 4 minutes. The line disconnected. I did exactly what he said. No bag, no coat, no explanation. I walked out of the apartment I had shared with Daniel for 2 years. The lift took forever. When the doors opened into the lobby, I saw a black car waiting outside. I stepped toward it, then stopped. Across the street stood a man, gray coat, hands in his pockets, watching me. I had seen him before, at the networking event where I met Daniel, 3 years earlier. He had been standing near the bar. I remembered because he spilled a drink on my coat. At the time, I thought it was an accident. Now he smiled, and in that moment, I understood. Daniel was not the beginning. Eleanor was not the beginning. Sophia was not the beginning. Whatever was happening had started years before I met any of them, maybe decades. The car door opened. Marcus was inside. Get in. I did. The vehicle accelerated away. I looked through the rear window. The man in the gray coat remained on the pavement, watching, smiling. Then Marcus handed me a sealed file. Across the front were 4 words. Geneva Incident, Restricted Access. I looked at him. What is this? Marcus's face was pale. Something your father should have told you a long time ago. I opened the file. The first page contained a photograph. My father, 18 years younger, standing beside Eleanor Voss, and between them, the man in the gray coat. Below the photograph was a name, Victor Kane. I had never heard it before, but the next line made my blood turn cold. Status, presumed dead. I looked back through the rear window. The man I had just seen across the street was supposed to have been dead for 18 years, and somehow he knew about my wedding. Chapter 5. The Dead Man Who Knew My Father. There are 3 kinds of secrets. The secrets people keep to protect themselves, the secrets people keep to protect you, and the secrets people bury because the truth would destroy everything. My father had always told me our family survived because we knew the difference. That night, sitting in the back of a black car with a file marked Geneva Incident, Restricted Access resting on my knees, I realized something. My father had lied. Not about one thing, about my entire life. I looked at the photograph again. My father, Eleanor Voss, Victor Kane, 18 years younger. All 3 standing outside a glass office building beside Lake Geneva. The date printed beneath the photograph was September 14th. I had been 11 years old. I remembered that month, not clearly, only fragments. My mother crying in the kitchen. My father disappearing for almost 2 weeks. Security guards suddenly appearing outside our home. My parents telling me we were taking a family holiday to Scotland. We never went to Scotland. Instead, my mother and I stayed inside a private estate for 12 days. I had forgotten that, or maybe I had been encouraged to forget. I turned the page. Confidential acquisition, Helixa Biomedical Systems. I looked at Marcus. What was Helixa? A medical technology company. What kind of technology? Diagnostic systems, imaging software, predictive analytics. Owned by Victor Kane? Co-founded. With my father? No. Marcus looked out of the window. With your mother. The words did not make sense. My mother? Yes. My mother was an art historian. That is what the public record says. I stared at him. No. Amelia, no. My mother taught museum conservation. Later. I felt something tighten inside my chest. The car moved through the city. Streetlights passed across Marcus's face. My mother founded a medical technology company? She helped develop the original intellectual property. That's impossible. It isn't. Why didn't she tell me? Marcus did not answer. I turned another page. There she was, my mother, Dr. Evelyn Hart. Not Evelyn Hart, art historian. Dr. Evelyn Hart, computational imaging researcher. I read the line again, then again. My hands started shaking. My mother had died when I was 22. Cancer. 8 months from diagnosis to funeral. I had sat beside her hospital bed, held her hand, listened to her tell me stories about paintings and museums and the importance of living honestly. Honestly. The irony almost broke me. She lied to me too. Marcus spoke quietly. She left that world before you were old enough to understand it. That doesn't answer me. No. Then answer me. He looked at me. Your mother was afraid. I laughed once, a bitter sound. Of Victor Kane? Yes. Why? Marcus pointed toward the file. Keep reading. The next section was heavily redacted, but enough remained. Helixa Biomedical had developed software capable of analyzing large-scale diagnostic data sets. At the time, the technology was years ahead of the market. Hospitals wanted it, governments wanted it, insurance companies wanted it. And according to the file, Victor Kane wanted something more. Control. Not just of the company, of the data. Patient records, predictive health models, commercial risk profiles. My mother objected. My father supported her. Victor did not. What happened? I asked. Marcus looked at the file. There was a dispute over the sale. To Hart Global? Yes. Why would my father buy the company? To protect your mother's intellectual property. I kept reading. Then I reached the incident report. September 17th, private meeting, Geneva, 5 attendees. My father, my mother, Eleanor, Victor, and 1 outside legal advisor. The meeting ended at 9:40 p.m. At 10:12 p.m., Victor Kane's vehicle left the underground garage. At 10:31 p.m., the vehicle crashed through a barrier on a mountain road outside the city. The car burned. A body was recovered. Identification was incomplete. Victor Kane was declared dead. I looked up, but he wasn't. Apparently not. Did my father know? Marcus hesitated. I don't know. I watched him. That's the first lie you've told me tonight. His jaw tightened. I leaned forward. Did my father know Victor survived? I cannot prove it. That wasn't my question. Marcus said nothing. The silence answered for him. I closed the file. Take me to my father. Amelia. Now! He may not be at the estate. Then find him! Marcus stared at me for a long moment, then told the driver to change direction. My father lived 40 minutes outside the city. The house was not the largest property our family owned, but it was the only one he called home. Stone walls, old trees, no visible security, plenty of invisible security. We arrived at 1:36 in the morning. The lights in his study were on. Of course they were. My father had never slept well. Now I wondered why. I walked through the front door without knocking. A security officer stepped forward, then recognized me. Miss Hart? Where is he? The study. I did not wait. I crossed the hallway and opened the study door. My father was sitting behind his desk, 71 years old, silver hair, white shirt, no jacket, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. He looked at me, then at the file in my hand, and something changed in his face. Not surprise, defeat. You know, he said. I threw the file onto his desk. Not enough. Marcus remained outside. My father looked toward the door. Leave us. Marcus disappeared. I stood across from the man who had built half my world and hidden the other half. Who was my mother? His eyes closed. That hurt more than any answer. Amelia. Who was she? She was your mother. Do not do that, my voice cracked. Do not reduce this to some emotional answer because you think I can't handle the truth. He looked older suddenly. Your mother was brilliant. I know. No, you knew part of her. The sentence cut deep. He stood and walked toward the fireplace. She met Victor at university. They were both researchers. He understood finance, she understood imaging systems. Together, they built Helixer. And Eleanor? Legal counsel. I laughed bitterly. Of course. My father continued. Victor became increasingly aggressive about commercialization. He wanted access to datasets your mother believed should never be sold. So she tried to stop him. Yes. And you? I financed her exit. You bought the company. I tried. Tried? My father turned. Victor refused. I stared at him. What happened in Geneva? Silence. What happened? My father looked at his left hand. The scar. The one he told me came from broken glass. Then he said, Victor brought a gun. I stopped breathing. He what? The meeting became violent. My father's voice was calm. Too calm. Like he had repeated the story silently for 18 years. He accused your mother of destroying his life. He said the technology belonged to him. He threatened her. And Eleanor? She tried to calm him. I almost laughed. You expect me to believe Eleanor was the peacemaker? Back then, things were different. No, people are different when you don't know them. My father looked at me sharply. He understood who I meant. Daniel, Sophia, everyone. What happened next? Victor fired. The room disappeared. For a moment, all I could see was my mother, her hands, her smile, her hospital bed. Was she hit? No. My father touched the scar. I was. I stared at his hand. The bullet? Grazed me. Broke glass behind me. That was the broken glass story. Technically true, completely dishonest. Then what? Security arrived. Victor escaped. In the car? Yes. The car that crashed? Yes. But there was a body. My father looked away. We believed it was him. Believed? The remains were badly burned. DNA? This was 18 years ago. The identification process was complicated. That is not an answer. No. I stepped closer. When did you discover he survived? My father said nothing. I felt rage rise. When? 7 years ago. 7. I could barely process it. You knew for 7 years? We received intelligence. And you did nothing. We increased security. You did nothing. We protected you. No, you kept me ignorant. For your safety. There it is. I laughed. The sentence powerful men use when they want to control women. My father flinched. Good. I wanted him to. You let me live in an apartment with Daniel. I didn't know about Daniel. You knew Victor was alive.
We did not know where. You knew someone had threatened my mother. Yes. You knew Eleanor was connected to Geneva. Yes. And you still kept her as chief legal officer. My father's expression changed. That was when I realized there was another secret. I whispered, "Why?" He returned to his desk. "Because Eleanor helped save your mother." I stared at him. What? After Victor fired, Eleanor triggered the security alarm. She got Evelyn out. No, it's true. Then why is she trying to destroy my succession? I don't know. I looked at him. Again, silence. Again, a lie. You know something. I have suspicions. Tell me. My father hesitated, then opened a drawer. He removed another file, smaller, older. He placed it in front of me. Inside was a share certificate. Heiress Biomedical Systems, ownership allocation. Victor Kane, 40%. Evelyn Hart, 35%. Eleanor Voss, 25%. I looked up. Eleanor owned the company. Yes. And when Victor died? His shares became disputed. And my mother? Transferred her interest into a protected structure. What structure? My father looked directly at me. A trust. My skin went cold. Who is the beneficiary? He did not answer. He did not need to. Me. I stepped back. No. Amelia, no! You inherited more than Hart Global. The room became silent. I thought about Daniel's contract, future beneficial interests, successor assets, declared proceeds. Everything changed after marriage. They did not need Hart Global. They needed Heiress, or whatever Heiress had become. How much is it worth? My father's answer came quietly. Potentially more than Hart Global. I could not speak. The technology, the patents, the datasets, the licensing rights, 18 years of development. My mother had hidden an empire inside a trust, and I was the beneficiary. Does Eleanor know? She knows the tax exists. Does she know I'm the beneficiary? She shouldn't. Shouldn't! My voice rose. Daniel has a contract designed around future beneficial interests. Sophia took money from Eleanor. Victor Kane is alive. Someone has been watching me for years, and your answer is she shouldn't know. My father sat down. For the first time in my life, he looked afraid. Not for himself, for me. The wedding, he said. What? When is it? 17 days. I almost smiled. No. His head snapped up. Amelia! No. If Victor is involved, then canceling tells him I know. I don't care. I do. You are not equipped for this. The words landed badly. Very badly. I walked toward his desk. Say that again. He stood. I mean, you have not been trained for operational risk. No, you mean I'm the daughter you kept ignorant. That is not fair. Fair? I laughed. You hid my mother's life. You hid Victor. You hid a trust worth billions. You kept Eleanor inside our company, and now that the consequences are standing at my door, you want to tell me I'm not equipped? My father said nothing. I leaned closer. You made me unprepared. His face changed. But I am not powerless. I picked up the share certificate. The wedding continues. No. Yes. Amelia, I forbid. I laughed. Actually laughed. You forbid? He stopped. For the first time, my father seemed to remember something. I was 33 years old, not 11, not a child, not someone he could hide in Scotland. The wedding continues, I repeated. Why? Because everyone wants something from me. I counted them. Daniel wants access, one finger. Sophia wants Daniel and money. Second. Eleanor wants control. Third. Victor wants whatever my mother denied him. Fourth. I looked at my father. And you want me obedient. His face tightened. I lowered my hand. I'm done giving people what they want. I left the study at 3:10 a.m. Marcus was waiting outside. He looked at me. How bad? Worse. I handed him the Helixa file. He read the first page, then looked up sharply. Miss Hart. I know. This changes the threat assessment. I know. We need to cancel the wedding. I smiled. You sound like my father. That should concern you. It does. We walked toward the car. Then my phone vibrated. Daniel. 7 missed calls, 4 messages. Where are you? Are you okay? Why did you leave? Call me. Then a 5th message appeared. This one was different. I stared at it. Daniel had sent a photograph. My apartment, the bedroom, my side of the wardrobe, empty. Not because I had removed anything, because someone else had. Below the photograph, Daniel wrote, Amelia, someone has been inside the apartment. Marcus saw my face. What? I showed him. His expression changed instantly. He called his team. I looked at the photograph again. Then another message arrived. Unknown number. A single sentence. Your mother left you something. Eleanor has been looking for it for 18 years. I typed back. What? The reply came immediately. Ask Sophia why she became your friend. I stopped breathing. No, not Sophia too. Not from the beginning. I thought about university, the library where we met, the coffee she spilled, the friendship that followed, birthdays, holidays, my mother's funeral, my engagement, years of memories. Then I remembered something tiny, something I had not thought about in more than a decade. The first day Sophia spoke to me at university, she already knew my mother's name. At the time, I assumed she had heard it from someone, but I had never told anyone. I looked at Marcus. Investigate Sophia's family. We already did. No, go further. How far? I stared at the anonymous message. All the way back. Marcus nodded. We reached the car. Before I got in, he received a call. He listened. His face changed. What happened? I asked. He lowered the phone. Our team reached your apartment. And? No forced entry. Then how did someone get inside? They used a key. Daniel had a key. I had a key. Sophia had once had an emergency copy. But there was another problem. What did they take? Marcus listened to the person on the phone, then looked at me. Nothing obvious. I frowned. Then why empty the wardrobe? They weren't stealing. What were they doing? His answer made everything clear. Searching. For what? My mother's secret. Something Eleanor had been looking for since Geneva. Something connected to Helixa. Something valuable enough to engineer relationships, infiltrate companies, corrupt friendships, and resurrect a dead man. And suddenly I understood why the conspiracy had become urgent. My wedding was in 17 days. Maybe the marriage was not their deadline. Maybe something else was. I got into the car. Take me back to the apartment. Marcus shook his head. No. I need to see what they searched. It is not secure. Exactly. Miss Hart. Marcus, he stopped. I need to know what my mother left me. He stared at me, then finally nodded. But before the driver could move, Marcus's phone rang again. He answered, listened, then slowly turned toward me. What? His voice was quiet. We found the connection to Sophia. My heart stopped.
What connection? Marcus held my gaze. Sophia Reed is not her legal birth name. I felt the air leave my lungs. What is it? He looked down at the file on his screen, then back at me. Sophia Kane. Silence. The city moved around us, cars.
Watch out for part 2.